Purpose-Driven Progress. As always, I am your host, Jacob Hicks, and today I'm extremely excited about the guest I've got on. We're bringing on Barbara Fox. She is the co-founder and CEO of Cannabis Supply, a Nevada-based company that bills itself as a one-stop shop for cannabis packaging. Before launching Cannabis Supply, Fox was in college majoring in biology and health policy and planned to attend medical school, but her father and brother asked her to help them come up with packaging solutions for a Nevada-based cannabis facility they were working in. Her packaging solution solved some critical packaging issues, and soon after, other cannabis businesses started calling Fox for packaging solutions, and Cannabis Supply was born. Now, at 29 years old, she has created packaging for thousands of cannabis brands nationwide, has over the years gained a tremendous amount of experience in cannabis compliance and consumer trends in every market. She has gained the notable reputation of establishing packaging trends in any market she touches, while at the same time helping cannabis operations save costs and improve their packaging department's efficiency. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
So, I've got to know, that's kind of a big pivot going from, thinking you're going to be pursuing, the medical world and getting into cannabis. So, what was that transition like?
I think it was something that it didn't take too much to think about growing up. I grew up with around a lot of entrepreneurs. Many summers of my life, I went ahead and had to go and work in my family businesses, whether it was my parents' businesses or my older brother and sister's businesses. So having to take the plunge of doing a career pivot of, hey, I'm almost done with school. I got accepted into a medical school and my whole tuition was going to be paid for by the medical school I got into.
Wow.
Why am I going to mess this up? And it kind of was one of those things where it felt right in my gut. It just kind of was a gut instinct that this was something that I needed to pursue. And it was something that if I had to think about in my day, what made me more passionate or made my days more fulfilling, no matter how hard any days were, it was going into this direction, which for now, here we are 8 years later. I have no regrets.
I love it. Well, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's true for most entrepreneurs. Like eventually, like when you find the thing that really resonates with you, kind of fills your cup. I know for my part, getting into coaching and things, like I gave up, some really successful, sales jobs, but I wouldn't go back is really the thing. I'm guessing you probably feel the same way.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's kind of one of those things where kind of at the same time with being in business, I'm going back to continue my education, but not in medical, but going into the law school route. And it's kind of one of those things where to go back in reverse and flip things around again, no, it felt right at the moment and it still feels right now. So
I
yeah.
love it. Well, you can always see, especially when you're an entrepreneur, like you can really see like the real impact that going back to school or, taking a certification of some sort can really have on your business almost immediately.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. So, I do not have a background in packaging, shocker to everybody here. But tell me how does it work? Like, let's say, I'm somebody like a smaller, cannabis supply company of some sort. I need to get packages out. What does the process look like?
So a lot of the process where I'm very open with my clients, one of the first things I do ask them is, what kind of brand do you want to represent? Do you want to be a top shelf product that you have the best in the state? Do you want to be middle shelf that, hey, it's like you have a good product and you're a value brand? Or do you want to be the cheapest of cheap because you're just growing so much in volume? So I really try to get to know my clients that way of what is their product? Because what I've ran into in the past is where consumers know if like, hey, if they buy a product that, for instance, that costs, for cannabis terms, $65 for an eighth of an ounce of cannabis is very expensive. So if they're buying that, they're going to want a good product. And it's slowly but surely, if you don't have a good product and you have this higher packaging cost and your higher value, they're not going to buy you anymore.
Yeah.
So I really make sure that the clients that I do have when I onboard a new customer is that their product and their packaging really represents what it is, and there's people that they grow in the mix where I grow a little bit of this and I grow a little bit of that. So I guide them in the right direction to maybe, hey, you need to have multiple brands, or hey, because you have something that's a lower testing product or it's very cheap and small quality or things like that, you put it into a bag. And hey, if you have something that's the most, badass, whatever strain, there's people that are very proud of what they grow. then I say, hey, go all out. Let's go ahead and put in the most expensive packaging, which the most popular product is a glass jar. And, it's just, I really get to know the clients and what their product is. Even though I don't smoke, it's one of those things where just coming from a background of cannabis in my family of growing the product, I've really grown a great appreciation of cannabis as a beautiful plant as well.
Yeah, I mean, really what it is, right? I mean, same as like a whiskey, right? Like you want
Yep,
like there's really bottom shelf stuff and there's really, really high end stuff that costs thousands of dollars. So I mean, I
exactly.
guess my next question is when you first are meeting with clients, I mean, how often do you have to have, maybe those more difficult or awkward conversations where you're like, hey, listen, based on, I understand that you want to have like a really luxury, top shelf product, but that's really not where you're at right now. I mean, how does a conversation like that go?
I I'm very realistic where, I'm
Mhm.
very open with my clients. They know my background. They know, that, hey, I tell them like, hey, I come from the cannabis industry myself with my family. And I tell them that I know like the reason why I'm telling these things is because I've seen it in my own family's operations. And so I give them that little bit of expertise. But at the end of the day, if they say they want that, then, I go ahead and I'll sell it to them because that's what they really want. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
keep raining on their parade per se. But, at the same time too, I just try to whatever they're envisioning of what they want their packaging to be, I go ahead and let them, I let them do it too, because it's at the end of the day, they wanna represent something that they feel like they are, and that's my job to go ahead and fulfill it and make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, you have to
Yeah.
set realistic expectations, be honest with them, but
Yeah,
if
and
they
then
and that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do, right?
Exactly too, but even too, if like those type of companies where you do have to have the awkward conversation, the next awkward conversation is packaging costs. Or okay, so you want that expensive
Right.
packaging, this is going to be your unit cost to package it up. Then they change their mind. And that's what happens a lot where,
Yeah.
the cannabis industry is perceived as, wow, this is a money maker. But no, most every state that I've crossed into where at this point, I have clients in every single legal market, whether it's still medical or recreational. Everybody is struggling. And
Yeah.
this is where it's just there's so much oversaturation of product and there's so much competition. And that's where the
Mhm.
packaging and the branding is where like it really makes a difference because that's what they rely on to sell their product. And that's where when it comes to budgetary needs, sometimes they have to do little curves and little changes to, stay in business is what you're
Yeah.
seeing a lot lately, especially these last 2 years.
Interesting. Okay, which I mean that makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, like, and that's true of any product. Like, if it's a quality product, it'll speak for itself to some degree.
Yeah.
But if it's not branded well, then like it's kind of moot almost. Is that true in cannabis too?
Yeah, exactly. It's like how, it's like you brought it up earlier, just like Whisker with the liquor alcohol industry. The cannabis industry is very much so going in that same route of when it first started. You had a lot of these smaller craft distilleries or breweries,
Mhm.
however you want
Mhm.
to put it into different realms of alcohol. And you have that now, but you also have big corporate like
Mhm.
Budweiser, Bush. You have all these bigger companies coming in and kind of trying to standardize what the cannabis industry is. And as it continues to grow and expand, is that's what we're going to see is just, we're going to still have the craft brewers or the local favorites. Everybody's going to love them, but then you're going to have the big players as well. And that's where right now you see a lot of weeding out in between of in
Mhm.
within the industry of weeding out who can make a good craft product at the end of the day are actually the people that are surviving.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm curious too, and this might be kind of a difficult question to answer
Yeah.
without a lot of context, but I'm curious, like if I'm like a middle, middle of the road, cannabis growers. I love the product, love what I'm doing and everything. It's time for me to get my product on the shelf, and I'm looking to differentiate myself in some way to like really showcase that I have a good quality product. I mean,
Mhm.
what recommendations would you offer?
So also too, it's, great from my multitude of experiences. Marketing is one of them. And I was very
Mhm.
fortunate, or I am fortunate to have an uncle who is a marketing expert who has
Mm.
done large for Intuit as one of his clients, Invisalign. He has very
Wow.
big multinational accounts. And what we did when we started our family's brand was focus groups.
Mhm.
So we went ahead and we did focus groups. We paid for those types of studies of, hey, like what like if when you think about cannabis, what do you want to experience and how do you like, how would you want the product to look? And we did a lot of like graphic testing and kind of a lot of
Interesting.
these different looks. to really see like, what people would like. So I would suggest if you can afford to do focus groups, do focus groups, but also too, if you need something more budgetary friendly of how you can decide how to start a cannabis brand, I would just go into your simple big box stores, walk into
Mm,
Target and just really see what are the packaging trends that you're seeing and replicate that into cannabis because that same consumer going to Target, going to Costco, you name it, they're probably going into a cannabis dispensary and buying product as well.
mhm.
So it's just
Yeah.
that same repetition of seeing something visually, it's gonna gravitate it towards them because they've seen it before. It maybe looks like a familiar product, where cannabis still for many people is kind of something where they walk into a dispensary and they're like, "Oh, like I'm kind of walking into a shady place. Buying cannabis is kind of weird." So you still get a lot of people that have that mentality of cannabis that they're still well, they want to try it, but they don't really know what they're looking for. So if you give them a product or a look of a packaging that's very familiar to them, that's going to make their purchasing decision making a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh, so I love that, especially because I mean, a lot of folks, as we know, like they don't have, gobs of money to be spending on a bunch of focus groups. So, I mean,
Hmm.
being able to like go into, wherever you would go to look and just seeing what's out there already, because they probably have spent gobs of money on focus groups to see what worked. And, not necessarily copy them exactly in any way, but like just taking some like tips here and there. One
Yeah.
of the other strategies that I love around that kind of a similar thing is using your social media. Because like if you have, I mean, social media is free for the most part. And if you have a decent following, or at least a handful of friends that are willing to, comment and
Hmm.
engage with you, saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about, calling my company, this, or this. This is what I'm thinking about. I'm not really sure which one I
Hmm.
like," and letting them kind of tell you which resonates with them. Not again making the decision, but
Yeah.
just informing you on what's been resonating for them so far. So, I mean, I absolutely love that. I'm super curious, and we kind of talked about this before, but you talked
Yeah.
about like some of the legal aspects of some of this stuff, right? You said you're going back to school for it?
Yes. Yeah. So exactly. So I'm going back to school to besides corporate business, but for intellectual property for patents and, different things like
Mm,
that to be able to with one where the creativity of well compliance for packaging and in general the compliance in every state is completely
mm,
different, but also two, the way you design
right.
packaging, that intellectual property that, I've had to deal with some struggles and challenges as a packaging designer myself and getting my own design patents. It's been one of those things where I've had to learn on my own and go through those failures and then being able to come back again. But compliance is on a cannabis level is a big deal. Absolutely.
I I can only I mean, I can't even honestly, because I mean, again, I don't have a legal background. I mean, I've, dabbled with things here and there, but I mean, how different is it from like state to state when we're talking about, cannabis packaging?
Yeah, so basically for every state, like Nevada is one of the special ones where I'm based out of. It's kind of an outlier where, hey, you
Mm,
need a child resistant bag to walk out of a store. But in most of the older veteran markets like Washington, California, you get kind of a paper bag and you can walk out with a little paper bag. And that's where a lot of the market has a national standard of that. But you have mixtures of, hey, packaging of certain types had to be child resistant. And especially with cannabis, where not only do you have the flower itself, you have gummies, you have beverages now, you have all these different types of concentrates and vapes and dabbing. There's, arrays of hundreds of
mhm,
different ways it seems like now that you can consume cannabis, that it's one of those things where as the new types of products are being created by individuals and companies, it's like the state is constantly having to catch up and hey, you guys now can make this. Well, you need to package it this way to keep consumers safe and especially the children safe because that's their biggest thing is the advertising
yeah,
towards children. They don't want anything to look like a packet of Skittles or Fruit Loops. It has to they kind of do want that
yeah,
very whether it's
mhm,
very generic or even some states they're like no flashy. So it's kind of one of those things where how I have to keep up with it and even too it's these companies they hire compliance officers and their job is to basically keep up with their whatever state that they're in, their local ordinances, the updates, and a lot of different
yeah,
rules and regulations they have to operate by. But I kind of do that as well. I go in, there's always Zoom meetings that I just kind of listen in the background every day for whatever state that I want to focus on a little bit more, or if I know there's changes. especially too, there's so many cannabis media
Mhm.
resources I'm signed up for. So whenever something happens first, then hey, I get a little email in my, inbox saying, hey, the state changed this. And so it's just kind of one of those things where it's kind of a part of my, like, not daily, I would say, but in my week, I'm like, oh, let me see what's going on here, it's going on there. And it's kind of been a part of my routine to constantly keep up with. And it's kind of fascinating just how crazy that even though cannabis is legal in more than half of the country, we're all working all different in different ways. And hopefully that can change with the next several years.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm curious, like again, if I was like a guy just getting started, middle of the road, kind of potential client of yours, I mean, how accessible are these laws like within my individual state? Like those are those pretty easy to find, and like how much of that is like are you aware of on your end?
Well, yeah, it's pretty accessible, especially to where every single one of these
Okay.
cannabis compliance boards, they have slightly different names no matter what state you're in. But either way, it's something cannabis marijuana board within a state. And it's just one of those things where it's all, you go on their website and there's a bunch of statutes and a lot of different things that are constantly being
Mm.
updated on a monthly basis usually. And it's just they're always keeping up and then they have to constantly look at rules. And the cannabis industry is constantly being pressured by inspectors. They have inspectors several times a year coming through. They get audited multiple times a year, especially with how strict the inventory is of just that alone. So compared to a lot
Mhm.
of other industries that I've seen or have a little bit of knowledge of, I would say the cannabis industry, they're basically treated even worse than like medical facilities or super high level type of where, it's because it involves human ingestion cannabis. They're treated very strictly. And so
Mhm.
there's big consequences if they don't keep up with the rules and all that. So that information is accessible. But of course, it's this case, whoever is a good operator and knows what they're doing and decides to keep up is just that's the main thing. Why, if I see a failure, is because an operator just didn't decide to keep up with his employees or check what they're doing. And it's in any business, no
Right.
matter where you go.
I remember. So tell me, so do you have like a bunch of SKUs, or do people tend to gravitate more towards like just a certain kind of packaging, or what does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, so when I first started my business, that's what I thought the answer was to have
Mm.
thousands of different SKUs to grow my business that way. So if I was selling to somebody in Nevada, I could also sell something
Mm.
else to a client in Michigan or
Yeah.
wherever else to, not be able to miss out on opportunities. And what I realized in the end, that was not the way to grow the business. The way to grow the business was to actually getting into manufacturing ourselves because as I stated earlier, we have a facility that's 30,000 square feet where I thought that 30,000 square feet should be to hold inventory. But as we learned, it's just people, they want customization.
Mhm.
People want things for that represent their own product and themselves. And what we converted a lot of our space into is for a manufacturing footprint. I got into manufacturing specifically with custom labels 5 years ago. And since then, that's where we've been focusing and gravitating our growth is, first with the custom labels, we downsized the number of SKUs to like the top 50, 75 SKUs of
Yeah.
packaging that can work universally in most states. And then being able to then in turn have machinery that can put our labels directly onto different products.
Mm.
So our customers can have a fully branded product in house. And that's what basically the one stop shop of cannabis packaging came from us and what we decided to do.
I love it. Well, I'm curious. So you said you had like a whole bunch of SKUs and you realized that really like your top like 50 or 70. I mean, it's that 80-20 rule we always talk about in business, right? Like you get
Yeah.
the most of your business, most of your revenue from like 20% of what you have to offer. So I'm curious because like in my realm, in my world, experimentation is huge, right? Like you always want to be trying new things, figuring out things, not like a ton, like crazy amount, but
Hmm.
trying different things just to see if you can improve things a little bit better or if something resonates a little bit more. Is that also true for you in your business?
It is true, and what I've noticed where in product development, where earlier, I have two design patents that I've created and
Mm,
I've gotten improved by the U.S. Patent Board. And
cool. Wow.
it's what's interesting is that you see product innovation in a good economy. So when the economy was a lot better 4 years ago, I was constantly coming out with new products, I was filing patents. I was doing all these different things of different types of containers, tubes, you name it. I
Mm.
was creating all these different things. But when people have less money, innovation kind of just goes a little bit down, especially more or less in the small business world, I would say. Definitely probably not in the upper tiers of,
Yeah.
Meta, Facebook, where in times of struggle, they get big investments and create AIs, that's what we've have been able to see now,
You're not
you
creating
know?
AI yet?
Yeah, we're not creating AI over here yet, but basically, and that's where innovation right now, where people, it's always it's a budgetary innovation where right now a lot of it is just kind of marketability and
Mhm.
how graphics and packaging presentation is. And that's where a lot of the innovation is coming from right now within my space.
Mm.
But definitely when it comes to different types of like containers and packaging, we're going to probably see an uptick of that as we've seen a lot of different consolidations happen. But
Oh,
at the end of the day, what product development in the cannabis space is, there's really, I hope there can be change, but a lot of people are kind of more negative where they're like, oh yeah, no change. They just want the same thing. A lot of people are stuck in the habits, and you see that in many aspects of life or in the business world where people don't like change. But, hopefully with like different innovations of, all the different projects I've had sitting in a drawer for a while now, hopefully I'll be able to bring those to life eventually for different types of containers and new things. But it all just kind of depends of if you see with the consumer, if they're not
mhm.
touching a product as much, that's when you have to bring out the fresher ideas.
Yeah. Well, and especially, I mean, especially for, like the cannabis world, like that's still, I feel like still like a relatively new industry. And
Hmm.
still, I mean, like it's got to be pivoting all the time and finding new ways and new things that are going on. So, I mean, you have to, I mean, either keep up or get left behind, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm really curious. So when it comes to like the management and the, managerial side of everything you're doing, has it been, because you've been doing it for 8 or 9 years, you said, right?
Yep.
So has it just been, absolute smooth sailing, no problems at all? Have you had some challenges along the way?
Oh yeah, no, absolute challenges, especially coming in, starting a company at 20 years old, the dynamic of where, a lot of my employees are the same age as
Mm.
me, and
Hmm.
and I started the company. I've only maybe ever fired 2 employees my whole life.
That's
So,
great.
so every single person that I've had here have been my day one. They kind of grew up with me as I grew up learning how
Hmm.
to do business on my own. So I'm very thankful and appreciative of the people that I have around me. But, definitely it's not as easy. It's kind of one of those things where, not only having to be like an HR manager, but also, hey, having to control finances, operations, while trading off all these different hats or being a salesperson. So I'm very familiar of how to play multiple hats at the same time. And honestly, I wake up every day. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do the best I can do every day and
Yep.
go into work with that same mentality. And that's kind of been my operational flow of just, honestly, as long as the people, your employees especially, they see you trying your hardest and your best effort, that's how you're going to grow and develop a really good team. And I've always just kept that same mentality and gotten through a lot of different, especially more or less, not like challenges of people, but growth challenges in the business where, it's a good problem to have. It's like, wow, I'm growing too fast and I don't know how to keep up. How can I
Hmm.
make my employees work faster or we work longer or work harder or new machines? It's, whatever type of hurdle whatever the solution is for those hurdles has been something that I've been very fortunate that the team that are around me have been the best support system ever.
I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, I think regardless of whether you're entrepreneur, solopreneur, if you're, just doing the regular 9 to 5 thing or something else entirely, I mean, the people around you, I think will make or break us regardless.
Yeah.
I'm really curious though, like in your journey, like, so like for me personally, like in my, entrepreneurship and my business and things, like you have a finite amount of time and you have a finite amount of money, right?
Yep.
And you gotta like, and like everybody has their own skill set. Like I'm more of a sales guy. I have a sales background, but like marketing and design isn't my thing.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I will figure out, like, I will decide, all right, well, I'm gonna have somebody else do this for me. What has that been like for you? Like, when have you decided, like, hey, like, this isn't necessarily for me. I'm not the best at this, so I need to find somebody else to do it. Like, what does that kind of like cost analysis, time analysis look like for you?
Yeah, no, so definitely delegating. For
Hmm.
a long time, I'm good at delegating now, but I did not want to delegate,
Yep.
especially to hiring people. It's like I'm extremely conservative when it comes to hiring, and I think it's a good way to be. But I definitely have gotten a lot better now at delegating and just, it's like, hey, taking the risk where even at this point you kind of, yeah, money is tight or money, hey, like you're going to spend a lot of money on paying somebody else to do it, but you kind of do just have to take that risk because it's like, hey, like you said yourself, your strong suit is in sales, and hey, my strong suit, I'm also very good at sales too. And so that's one of my biggest strong suits as well. And it's where it's like, hey, I need to be able to, hey, if I'm going to sell product and packaging, that's the most important thing, or else we're not
Yep.
in business. So
Right.
it's just really having to make those decisions of, hey, if you, yeah, as much as we want to be multitaskers and do everything and be the best at everything, I really come to the realization that multitasking is the most inefficient thing to do.
Yes.
And that's where having to delegate and just honestly, it's like, hey, if I delegate or if I hire somebody for this and pay somebody this, that's what has to be done. And yeah, there's been times where, especially on the marketing side, same, that's one of my least favorite things to do
Yes.
for our company, hiring other people. And yeah, like I've had to hire 6 different marketing companies throughout my years of business. And that has not been a fun part of things, but it's kind of one of those things where you live and learn, and honestly, you just move on. It's just kind of having to get through and anything in life, you get through the rough patches. It just takes time, and you just get through those little weird funks of business, and you keep going.
Yeah. 100%. Well, I'm curious, like, what do you think it's better to, go ahead and start and try something and make some mistakes? Or do you think it's better to do, a whole ton of research and, make sure you hit the right, the right decision or some combination thereof? I mean, how do you typically handle those things?
Especially on a business idea,
Mm.
definitely a lot of research. So,
Yep.
for instance, right now we're expanding our manufacturing,
Mm.
and literally it took me like for the pouches, and that's what we're trying to get into now. And we've been importing in pouches for our 8 years of business, but now having to go into the concept of we're going to make them ourselves. I've been doing research for over 8 months just to try to make a decision of what machines to buy.
Yeah.
It's just that's one of those things where you do want to do the plentiful time of research, but kind of where I'm at that same cusp right now, at the same time, it's like, all right, Barbara, you already did so much research. Pick one
Yep.
already. So at this point, you do your research, but you have to not get into the neuroses of, oh my gosh, but then this one and this one. And sometimes you just do have to take the plunge. So definitely when you come up with a new business idea, definitely having a business plan, like even too, just hey, if it's not even a business plan that I went to go show like a loan officer at a bank or anything like that. I
Yeah.
came up with a business plan just for myself, just to say, hey, like these are going to be the projections. These are going to be this because not only would be a big investment for me, like over $1 million, $2 million investment I have to make, but it's one of those things where, hey, it's like I know what I'm doing is actually gonna either work out or it's going to go in the right direction to really think if it's gonna make sense and if that's what people want. So definitely when it comes to starting a business and researching ideas, absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. I don't, especially too, it's like, I'm gonna start let's say simple a car wash business, but oh, what car wash business are you gonna have a physical location? Are you gonna be mobile? Are you gonna do, there's so
Yep.
many just in that simple thing of, oh, I'm going to be a dog walker. Well, you're going to do it this way. You're going to do it that way. The business structure, there's so much research of how you can do your business to be the most successful and what actually works for you. And
Hmm.
people need to
I mean,
realize that they have to do that work.
yeah, 100%. When I think, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, you need to do, like, you can't just jump in blind, right? But
Yeah.
you need to find like that. I mean, it's always kind of a hard balance. Like, you got to do enough research to really understand what it is that you're doing, regardless of, buying machines or starting a new business or whatever. But then you have to make a decision. Eventually you have to jump in knowing that you're not going to know everything.
Hmm.
You're going to make some
Yep.
mistakes and you're going to, figure things out along the way. But having that, whether it's a business plan or just, I'm a big fan of just write. I think there's a lot of power to be said for just writing things down
Yep.
where you write something down, say, hey, I want to, yeah, start my car wash business, whatever it is. And then kind of just penciling it out, like seeing what it could look like. I think that's hugely, hugely powerful. But I want to
Hmm.
hit on something you mentioned earlier. I'm guessing this is probably part of your, your big 2025 goals, but you're expanding manufacturing.
Yes. So currently, right now, we're partnering with a company based out of Mexico City to go ahead
Mm.
and bring in a lot of machinery here in Nevada. We are going to be the first flexible packaging. That's what that type of packaging is called for
Okay.
making different types of pouches. We are going to be the first flexible packaging manufacturer in Nevada. And so we're really excited about that. And, not only are we gearing ourselves, just for our current existing business of the cannabis industry, where even right now, just for my current customer base of 40 million pouches a year is what we
Mm.
import in. It's constantly, we realize as you keep growing a business or kind of reverting back to when you start a business, you're successful if you figure out how to solve whoever you're trying to sell something to,
Yep.
solve their problem.
Yep.
If you can figure out how to solve their problem, where even if it's not even the full answer of, an epiphany that's going to solve every single thing, it's just crossing one little problem off their list. That's how you can really grow to be successful. And the problem that we had that I found the answer to do manufacturing and get more into it is, hey, lead times of importing in from
Mm.
overseas. People want smaller runs because a lot of people where we see on social media now, especially where people are just scrolling,
Mhm.
and there's all these new types of different things where people have so much accessibility to information and resources. People are changing their marketing every month, every week, and they need packaging to reflect all the new changes. Or, hey, we're doing packaging for Valentine's Day, now for St. Patrick's Day,
Yep.
president, whatever they're gonna do. It's like everybody kind of is so triggered to know what's next, what's next, what's next. And being able to do manufacturing for packaging for consumer goods on a smaller, like for smaller scales, because hey, it's still larger scale business, but
Yeah.
hey, they want something like I said for this holiday and the next holiday, or it's their whatever they want to do. And
Mm.
that's where you're going to even see in larger brands like Coca-Cola, like McDonald's, like you're already seeing already, they have these limited edition things and they're trying, and every industry is trying to trickle that down. And that's where that was my solution is, hey, we got to do it ourselves. We
Mhm.
can't just wait 3 weeks of an air shipment, spend thousands of dollars of shipping from China. It's no, hey, we got to do it ourselves here. And that's where,
100%.
taking that next step of what I enjoy doing is manufacturing at the end of this day. So yeah,
I love it. Well, I'm a big believer there's a lot to be said for made in America still. And I mean,
absolutely.
the fact that you guys are not only have your manufacturing in America, but you are growing your manufacturing in America, I feel like that's a huge deal. I love that.
Yeah.
So Barbara, let me ask, so if somebody's listening to this and they're interested in getting in contact with you or they want to learn, more about packaging their cannabis products, I mean, where should they be looking for you?
Yeah, no, go ahead. You can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me
Mm.
anytime there. Also, to our website, www.cannabissupply.com. And you can find my email, direct phone numbers, everything there. And, just honestly, I'm very accessible to reach out to. I'm the type of person where all my clients, anybody that I talk to, I don't even care if they're my competition or not. Everybody has my everyone has my direct cell phone at this point. I'm like, oh, sure, hand it out. So it's kind of very accessible to anybody because it's like it is today, just talking to you. It's really great to connect with people
Mm.
that are just, where they're like-minded, where they have good, entrepreneurial or different business acumen thoughts. But it's always good to pick somebody else's brain and perspective because you never know what you're going to learn. So I'm always
Yeah.
open to
Everybody's got
talking to
something to
anybody.
offer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I love it. Well, Barbara, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been fantastic having you on.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate your time and it's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, when anybody listening, so I'll leave the her links in the show notes. So you feel free to reach out to her and make sure to leave a review and make sure to subscribe. And we'll see you guys